So is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was maybe too big a word, but I don't know what, it's sort of a standard word in certain disciplines. Okay, so if we are looking at Ibn Hisham's historical Muhammad, and we are looking at, it can have different attitude towards Muhammad. So Western scholars can take Ibn Hisham's outline of events, but can give it a different value, even though the events are the same. And in giving that value, you find their own bias, right? And it can be negative, it can be neutral, or it can be positive. So, but what you find is that for Khadija, it is always positive. That was quite curious and very illuminating. Now, and that sometimes is not extended to the other wives of the Prophet. So we take an extreme case. The extreme case is Salman Rushdie's satanic verses, right? So where would you put the satanic verses? On this spectrum, where would it be? Is it hostile? Is it neutral? Is it hagiographical? Yeah, anybody read it? Has anyone read it? Yes.
It's hard to say. It may appear hostile.
Yes.
It's definitely not neutral. It's certainly not hagiography, but
Yes.
it kind of turns hagiography. Like it
It's
twists.
a satirical turn on hagiography.
Okay, excellent point. So what it is that it's a satire on the tendency to sacralize history in a certain way. Very satirical. But so it's not hostile in the sense of the people who made the Muhammad cartoons. You know? It's not hostile. It's very brilliant. It's brilliant. But yes. Okay, all right. So I thought, oh my God, I'm raising her hand.
Both of them, and then you'll be
So what happened in Salman Rushdie, he does not spare any of the Muslim idols. What he actually recognizes is, I don't know how we got into that, but it's an interesting example. So we have idolized, historical personalities. And in idolizing them, we have actually created a barrier between us and God. And generally that barrier is created in two ways. One is by closing our eyes and refusing to become self-aware or conscious, refusing to ask critical questions. And the other is that we create idols of a kind which raises questions of justice, introduces problematics in the concept of justice, which is very, very clearly stated in the Quran, right? So anyway, so he breaks these idols, but he spares Khadija. So if Salman Rushdie spares Khadija, there is something very special about it. And he only has 2 paragraphs on her. Only 2 paragraphs. And he goes to town about the other wives, the Medinan wives. He absolutely does. So I'm not even going to say what he says about them. But never mind. You can read the book if you like. So that really fascinated me. I thought, wow. The critique that people raise of the Prophet does not get to Khadija. And this is from people who have all kinds of attitudes. It does not get to Khadija. So what is it about Khadija? So anyway, so that's sort of, that's the literature written. We're talking here about the Western literature that is still based on Ibn Hisham, yeah, or literature on the life of the Prophet. Okay, so that's one whole section. Then we can look at what are Muslims doing in this area, which means we're basically looking at hagiographies now, and see what happens to Khadija in this. You don't like this word? Okay. I don't know, you were sort of scratching your head. So we can call it.
No, I hit my head on the wall. That's how.
Oh. So, you know, what we have to do, we have to move your chair forward.
Is there no Muslim neutral?
Well, you know, we have, I don't know where you want to put Salman Rushdie.
No, I just mean in your observation.
No, I know, because I did not observe that.
Okay,
I think the Muslim neutrals probably don't write the life of Muhammad.
okay.
You know, I think that's probably what's happened. And we haven't, it's such a, you know, we had a saying, is that a hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
We
Good.
can put like 23 years.
I haven't read 23 years.
I think
You
that's
have to
sort of
tell us
neutral.
about it. Okay, so it is neutral, is it by a Muslim?
Yes.
Okay, so could you tell me more about it?
I haven't read it in many years.
Who is the writer? Who is the author?
I don't remember the name of the author either, but it's called 23 years.
Okay, so this actually what I don't know, but what I did is I looked at what would be considered the definitive biographies, you know, like written by Western academics. Montgomery Watt actually just translates Hisham's historical Muhammad, and he's quite apologetic, you know. But there are others, and there's a whole slew of them, and some were hostile or some were neutral, but you could see that there were things they didn't quite appreciate about the Prophet. But Khadija, I mean, there was one, and I can go down, I have my printed thing here, okay, even though I didn't read it recently, and I can send stuff to people, the bibliography certainly. And he does something like he actually names a chapter after Khadija. And writes a very beautiful. The other thing I realized, and this is very curious, is that, and this actually brings us to the positive, you know, the biographies written by Muslims or by the community who believes in Muhammad as a prophet. So this person he titled a chapter Khadija. So that already shows that he admires her, because in all the other biographies you don't see a chapter named Khadija in English. So, and then in it though, it was mostly the same information that you see in other biographies, because there was not any more information about Khadija. But so just how we choose to title things or name things lifts up some stuff. So Ibn Hisham himself lifted up certain things. And the information is thing, but we can reorganize in a way and get a very different effect. So that's another thing I sort of was quite, you know, astounded by what happens there. But coming back now to what are Muslims doing with the historical Muhammad and Khadija. So what they're doing is, I saw that actually when you look at Ibn Hisham's, there was the first thing, the life of the Prophet, its first name. We're talking about titles and naming a whole chapter Khadija. So the sort of biography of the what we've come to call the biography of the Prophet or the Sirah literature was first called Maghazi, from Ghazwa. Okay? And the Maghazi means expeditions. So it was like, you know, the Shahnameh, but actually very different from Shahnameh. But it was about usually history so far in the last few thousand years of patriarchal rule. History is ordered around wars and who wins the wars. And the ones who win the wars then write the history about these wars. So the earliest literature about the Prophet is called Maghazi. So it's about how he won the wars and, you know, established his rule in Medina and things like that. So, and it describes, so we can say that that's what the men who wrote That's what they were interested in. Or they felt a need, the community felt a need for a warlord. Not the kind we have for Afghanistan. Yes?
Was it was it through poetry? Because a lot of expression of victory would be through poems. So were
No.
Ghazi expressing?
Actually, Ibn Hisham quotes a lot of poetry. And when people who do a critical study of that, they feel that the poetry just feels clunked right in the middle of things, sometimes not quite connected. But the Maghazi literature was not poetry, it was annals of war, or annals of whatever. So it was the first thing that the community creates as it starts thinking about its past. How did it come to be? It came to be because there were certain wars. And then, and after those wars, the second one, we come to the Sirah literature, right? Which is Siratul Nabi. And that has sort of stuck as a major genre till now. So first it is, how did we come to be? We came to be because there was a struggle between good and evil, and we were on the side of the good, and God helped the good, and so we are here. And then the second one, then, who is our head? Who is the symbol for this community? Yes.
What is Sirah?
Siratun Nabi, which means, if you want, Sirah of the prophet. Nabi is prophet, right?
Yes. Sirah means.
Sirah means life. So I've just, so it's generally just called the Sirah literature. So here the community is now, it has established itself. It has given birth to itself with this struggle between good and evil. It's almost like, the labor pains. How did we get born? This is the birth of the community. And then it needs a symbol. It needs a name for itself. And then the name, when it needs it to identify itself with one symbol, it becomes the prophet. That's where we see the Siratul Nabi. This is the second level of the literature on Muhammad. And here, then even though it's still quite a bit of the same information, now the community is not reading it as annals of war or, expeditions or struggle. It is reading it to know about their prophet. This is our symbol, this is our prophet. And maybe, so that's the sort of another level. I'm sort of looking at this literature now to see how the community is developing its own image through the prophet.